Hi guys, welcome back to Symbolic Logic Part 3. We are taking reference of Symbolic Logic 5th edition which was written by Irving M. Coffey from the University of Hawaii. In the part 1 and part 2, we have learned about what is the link between language and logic, how logic is evolved, what is logic, who is a logician, what does he do, and what are the two types of logic. Today, let's see about the first type of logic, which we call as classical logic or Aristotelian logic. So, guys, what is classical logic? Classical logic is a system of logic that studies the principles of valid reasoning using the method of deduction. Deduction, in the sense, it is mean by valid or invalid. It is also known as traditional logic or Aristotelian logic because it is developed by Aristotle and other ancient philosophers. This classical logic is a vast subject. From this logic only, second type of logic which we called as modern or symbolic logic is evolved. So first let's study deep about what this classical logic is about. In classical logic, we have some few terminologies which you must understand to know this subject, to understand this subject effectively. So, the first terminology is proposition. It is a statement which has got binary distinction. Binary distinction in the sense it can be true or false, but not both. So, in this classical logic, we don't use the term statement. Instead of statement, we use proposition. So, this group of proposition is known as inference. So, these two, two terminologies plays main role in understanding this classical logic. So, we also have a structure for this proposition. So, let's see what is the structure of this proposition. In symbolic logic, we call structure as argument, like we call the sentence as proposition. So, the argument consists of quality, quantity, subject, and predicate together. We also have two types of arguments in classical logic. Let's look into the case 1. All humans are mortal. Mortal means living beings. Socrates is a human. Socrates is a great philosopher in Greek. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. So, the you can see the three lines, right? So, each sentence or proposition we call it as premises. These are the three premises, and all these three premises contribute to a inference, which we call as group of propositions. So each one is a proposition. So the first line is first premise, the second one is the second premise, and third one is the third premise. And the line which got therefore is the conclusion in this inference. So we conclude according to the first two premises. So in the first premise, we can see all humans are mortal. It is correct, right? Because all humans are living beings. In the second premise, we can see Socrates is human. It is also true. Socrates is a great Greek philosopher. He is a human. So the second premise is true. From the first and second premise, they are concluding Socrates is mortal, which is also true. The Socrates is also a living being. So the conclusion is true. Let's look into the second case. In first premise, we have Socrates is human and mortal. In second premise, we have Plato is human and mortal. In third premise, we have Aristotle is human and mortal. In the fourth premise, which you also call as conclusion, we have therefore all humans are mortal. Socrates is human and mortal, which is true. Plato, we don't know he is a human being or something. It is just a name. So it is also true. We can conclude. So Aristotle is also a human and mortal. So the conclusion is true since all humans are mortal. The conclusion we can't conclude approximately whether it is true or false. The conclusion may or may not be true. So, if you see case 1, if the premises are true, then the conclusion has to be true, which we call it as strong relationship between the premises and conclusion. In second case, if you see, even if premises are true, still the conclusion may not be true, which is a weak relationship between the premise and the conclusion. So let's see what this case study is about. As I said, we have two arguments in this classical logic. Argument in the sense structure. So, as we seen in the first case, we have two types of arguments, which is deductive argument and inductive argument. Let's look into what is deductive argument. The first case is equal to the deductive argument. Even if the premises and conclusion are hypothetical, the argument makes sense. As I said before, in the case 1, it is simple. We can conclude both the premises are true, so the conclusion is true, which is approximate. So, the first case comes under the category of deductive argument, whereas inductive argument is equal to the second case. The provided premises cannot be hypothetical, which shows it is a relationship is weak. Therefore, such arguments are less probable or more probable. So, as we seen before, in case 2, we can't conclude the conclusion approximately, so it comes under the category of inductive argument. Note this point. This classical logic is about deductive argument as we seen before. The classical logic is a system of logic that studies the principles of valid reasoning using the method of deduction. So, we will be using the structure deductive argument in classical logic. Let's see about categorical propositions in the next part of the video.